Hey everyone, it's Mike with It's Pittsfield Tonight. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm here with Patrick Kavey. Patrick is our Ward 5 City Councilor in Pittsfield, and Patrick is also running for re-election this year. Patrick, thanks for coming on. And for those that don't know you, why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, so my name is Patrick Kavey. I am the current Ward 5 City Councilor. I went to Taconic High School in the Academy of Business Management, and I have my bachelor's degree in management. I'm looking into going back to school to get my master's. I was working for the trustees of reservations as an engagement and operations manager, but I actually, telling all of you now, am switching professions, and I'm going to be working with Berkshire Hathaway. I'm in training right now, lots to do, but by the summer I should be fully into my new position, and I don't know, I find it to be really exciting.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Well, I'm going to ask you the same thing I've asked everyone then. And I know I said this to you before when we were talking, but it seems like a couple months ago I talked to you at the airport. But
it's 2 years.
Yeah, that's hard to believe. It really is. But is there any particular issue or one certain thing that made you decide to run for city council?
Well, I mean, I guess like I had said in our original interview, I moved home from Denver, Colorado, and I was looking for work, and I noticed a lot of my friends were leaving because of the levels of compensation in the area. I mean, just living in Denver, I was making quite a bit more in a similar position than what I was making here when I first returned home. And the cost of living, although expensive, wasn't that much more here. And it's a city of 700,000 people, and there's 42,000 people here. So I immediately started to think, what can I do to make our community a little bit better? What can I do to retain more people who are my age? I don't want to see my siblings who no longer live here. I don't want to see my friends moving out. I want people to stay. And I think that Pittsfield has a lot of potential. We just have to change up the way we do things and think a little bit differently and be a bit more effective in order to kind of help all of the people in our city. I'm a strong believer in lifting up our most vulnerable populations, and I think that we all do better when we help the people in our community. But this past year with COVID was obviously very different than what I expected for my first term as a city councilor. I campaigned originally on a lot of environmental issues, on infrastructure, whether that be increased access to internet, whether that be roads, whether that be the Asheville to Cook Rail Trail coming through the city, which is happening. It's really exciting.
Yes.
And I also campaigned on education. My grandfather was an educator in Lee, and I think education is kind of the best tool that we can give people to lift them up out of some of these more difficult situations. So I ran with the idea that I wanted to get into our schools, more specifically our vocational high school, and work with students and the administration there, the faculty, the staff, and work with local business leaders to create a bridge between our vocational shops and some of these businesses that we have within the city, some of the advanced manufacturers, because college worked for me. But one of my brothers, for example, he didn't go to college. He's probably the most intelligent one out of all of my siblings when he applies himself. His brain just works very differently, and he found success in another avenue. And I think that the rhetoric when I was in school was very, you go to college or else. And I'm hoping to change that rhetoric in the city and leave the city in a better place than it was when I was in high school.
Now, with all that being said, because I know when I first did talk to you, you had a lot of things. You were gung-ho and ready.
Right.
And in the first time in the city's history, your term and it's your first term, along with a few other councilors, You've actually only been in council chambers, what,
Twice.
maybe twice? Okay. So,
Yeah,
and was one of those when you were actually being appointed or being confirmed a counselor, or?
No, so 3 times, I guess.
Okay.
But we didn't have our seat assignments until that day. So I was actually sitting in a different seat that wasn't my own until we switched around. But to your point, it's very strange being a city councilor and very rarely being in City Hall. And I look forward to being able to go back when it's safe to do so. And I think our meetings will be even more productive if we're in person. But when I started this term, I was in the process of, the city gives you about this much information, big binder, it's huge. I should have grabbed it so you could see how massive it is. But I was just kind of studying that, trying to figure out how the city worked, trying to figure out how to be effective. And then we started getting emails from the state, and we started seeing what was happening in Italy, Northern Italy specifically, and knew that it was coming here. And then we received an email from the mayor saying that there was a gentleman who was at Berkshire Medical Center. He had tested positive for COVID-19, and he had not traveled out of the area. So my immediate thought was, we have the first case of community spread in the state of Massachusetts. And everything kind of went into hyperdrive. And we've been, that happens in a position like this. So almost immediately our schools were closed. So there goes the work that I was doing with the former superintendent. We were working on the bridge with the vocational shops, and we were also working on universal pre-K. So all of that was halted. And we had to make some very, very fast decisions with very little information. We were almost like the guinea pigs for the rest of the country. And I think it's actually made me more effective because we had to effectively manage the contagion. And now we're in the mitigation phase of a deadly virus. And now we're working on the economic recovery too. And although this obviously is not what I expected, and it has not been easy, I think that the pandemic has given me kind of a learning curve that I'm very fortunate to have. And I think it's made me a much more effective counselor. And I look forward to the days when we can go back to the airport like we did with our last interview instead of doing this over Zoom. And I can get going on some of the work that I've been like just.
I mean, does it feel like your entire platform was put on pause?
Yep.
So
the only portions of it that weren't were environmental and the Asheville-Cook Rail Trail, but the main portion of it was education. And we were having meetings. I mean, I had a 4-hour meeting with Dr. McCandless, and he was willing to move forward with these ideas. He was excited. It was great. And then I was getting calls from other municipalities in the area saying, you see what's happening? Are you reading these messages from the state? What are you guys doing about it? And we declared local emergencies, and it was like in a blink of an eye, our focus shifted so quickly to the pandemic, and it's been constant ever since. And although our infection rate is lower right now, we're working on vaccinations. I spent yesterday with the health department trying to figure out the ins and outs of what they've been doing and how we're going to continue to move forward, how we're going to get our students back to school, what next fall is going to look like, whether or not people are going to need boosters. There's so much information that we're processing.
That being said, then coming out, and we're back into another election year,
right?
And not really. I mean, like I said, that first time in the city's history anything ever like this ever happened. So there's nothing to reference it to.
Right.
Coming into that time now where you'll be back out door knocking, campaigning. Unlike a normal election would be where you're running on your record from your first term, what do you feel to your constituents? What are your strengths, and what would you say as your first term as a counselor you're most proud of, your biggest accomplishment?
It's honestly tough to say, because although everything's been closed down, there have been a lot of projects that have moved forward. So for example, working with Milltown Capital and the $20 million upwards towards of investment that are going in at Bosque.
Now that's your ward, right? Ward 5.
Yep. So that's my ward. That's actually where I had my campaign fundraisers, and the amount of excitement that I was feeling, hearing their plans for Berkshire West, hearing their plans for their summer camp on Richmond Pond.
Which I'm super excited about.
I'm so excited. That all of that took a lot of work and was a great process to be part of. And I think that my business background helped quite a bit. One thing that's a really sore subject in my ward is the Barker Road Bridge. So before I was in office, and most people don't, I guess, know this yet, unless they've asked me about it, but the Barker Road Bridge is horrible. We all know it's horrible.
Yeah, it is.
It was not in the design phase before I came into office. So basically, the long story short is when the bridge on Peck's Road failed, it was significantly more dangerous than what's going on with Barker Road. One of the beams where the barriers are on Barker has failed, similar to what's happening on Holmes Road. But the rest of the bridge is still stable and sturdy. So with that being said, it's still extremely dangerous when people are coming down the hill from Outer Barker towards West Housatonic Street. People fly, they don't know. The lines aren't painted great. So we're repainting the lines, we're getting more signage up. We've started the design phase, which is the phase of bridge construction where we come up with the funds and where you design the actual bridge. Because the bridge is over 20 feet, we're not eligible for state funding. So we were having a really hard time coming up with the money for this bridge. It was going to be 2 million upwards towards there. And it was going to be fully funded by the city basically. But thankfully with this last boost of federal aid, we're going to hopefully be able to move this project along a little bit quicker. The design phase normally lasts for about 2 years, which is a while. But what I'm trying to do with that, although it's really unfortunate right now, I'm looking to have that bridge be rebuilt. It's taking a lot of effort and a lot of work. And Barker Road's also in pretty horrible condition. So we're working it out. So after the bridge is rebuilt, we can resurface that road. I wouldn't want to resurface it before because we'll have construction trucks, everything else, and we'll just get ruined.
Cadwell right there is a mess too.
Cadwell's being resurfaced this year.
Okay, awesome. I've had a few residents call me on that one.
Well, they're correct. It's absolutely horrible, but it's being resurfaced this year. So I'm really happy about that.
All right. Well, that being said, then what are you hearing? What's the most feedback or the most you're hearing from your constituents on the things that are most important to them?
My constituents, and it might just be because we have such a great relationship, but I think that I am the most fortunate ward counselor. I have a very interesting ward. It's the largest. It has a mixture of a little bit of an urban cluster. It's very suburban, very rural though. And a lot of the people in my ward, when they reach out, it's like I'm talking to my family members. We've gotten to know each other so well. And I think my favorite part about my relationship with them is the amount of support that they give me and the amount of positivity. And even when they complain about like road construction, if I explain to them in detail, which I do when someone reaches out, about the gas lines, the infrastructure underneath, when those are being updated, what a realistic timeline for that road to be resurfaced is, the cost, all these different factors that people don't normally think about, and the actual grade of the road. They appreciate the honesty, I think, and the transparency, even when you give them some type of not great answer. And I think that the reason that I'm doing as well as I am, and the reason that they're as supportive as they are, is because we have this open line of communication, and I'll tell you what you don't want to hear, and try and solve the problem for you. And I think people respect that I'm as honest with them as I am, and I don't just say, we'll take care of it. That was a little leeway, but.
Well, I guess in closing then, what would you say to your constituents and why they should reelect you? And make sure also your contact information. I'll put that up on the screen for you, but you have a campaign Facebook page or anything you want me to put on there?
What I would say to my constituents is I am so grateful for every single one of you. When I won my original election, it wasn't me winning, it was all of us winning. There were a lot of people who helped with my campaign, a lot of people who volunteered. Most of them live within the ward. Some of them live elsewhere, but what I would say to them is we're just getting started with the work that needs to be completed. 2 years went by very quick, especially with the current situation. And I look forward to continuing to serve them and continuing to work with them and trying to get some of these issues that they're having resolved, like a new lamppost or resurfacing or something bigger, like I help people get signed up for health insurance that don't have computers. I want to continue to be there for these people, and I hope and think that they'll continue to be there for me. So I
know Kevin Sherman said to me when I interviewed him, he said, ward counselors should be paid more than at-large counselors because ward counselors do all the work.
I mean, I may agree with Kevin on that. We have very, very large workloads. And we're normally the ones who get reached out to directly. I mean, but that's how I like it. How do you know what's going on in your ward if people aren't telling you? It's part of the reason.
Do you get many referrals from constituents that said, hey, I talked to an at-large counselor and they told me to call you?
Not regularly. It's happened a handful of times. I think people normally go to the at-large counselors when they can't get a response from the ward counselor, which is unfortunate. But normally, it's very direct communication between myself and my constituents.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I love it.
Well, and I guess in closing, your contact information, how people can reach out to you.
Okay, so my city email is pkavey@cityofpittsfield.org. My cell phone is 413-841-2770. And people can reach out any way that they feel comfortable. Some people reach out Facebook, some people text me, some people call me because they don't have a cell phone. Some people prefer email.
Do you have a separate Facebook page for your campaign?
I do.
Okay.
Yep. So if you basically just look up Patrick Kavey, Ward 5,
okay,
Pittsfield City Councilor Ward 5, it comes up. And if that's the way they want to communicate, they're more than welcome to. Or if they want to call me, they're more than welcome to. And one thing that I should note is normally after about 9 p.m., I put my phone on Do Not Disturb because I'm getting ready for bed. But when a phone's on Do Not Disturb, if any of my constituents ever have a serious issue, which has happened in the past, call me 3 times in a row. I know it seems strange, but it shuts off the Do Not Disturb on the phone, and I'll get back to you. I'll help you out. So
that's good to know. Thanks absolutely. Thanks for throwing that out there because that's actually really important.
It is.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And one last question that I've asked to everybody. I plan on doing some debate style forums. Is that something you would be willing to participate in?
You know, I like debates.
Awesome. I knew you'd say yes, but you never know.
Well, no chance.
All right. Well, thank you again, Councilor Kavey. I really appreciate it. And I hope to do more of these with you in the future. And I'll be bugging you soon as I organize some of these debates too.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you again, Patrick, and have a great evening.
You too.